Welcome back, guys, to the Futbal Biz podcast. As always, I'm Graysen and Hunter. He's Hunter Boyven. It's been a couple of weeks again, so obviously we have a lot to cover, but it is the international break, so it is a gift from the football gods on our procrastination. So let's jump right into it. So over the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of good games, uh, namely the UCL, the Premier League, the Bundesliga. So kicking it off, we're going to start with the fact that a legend has retired, and that legend is Mesut Ozil, one of the best players in his prime. I mean, he was electric in his passing. The guy could pass anywhere, he could set up anybody. He did this at both Real Madrid and Arsenal. He was only 34, so he called it a bit early, I think, but I think he did lose motivation for the game. But when he was at his peak, he was absolutely unstoppable.
Yeah, obviously as a Germany supporter, it's very sad. I was able to watch him just play fantastic in the 2014 World Cup, and of course his career at Arsenal mostly. I think magical is definitely a good word to describe him. Much like you would say the same for Modric and people like that. I think that's a very similar style of play. Really entertaining to watch, and it's sad that he's not at his peak anymore. But happy retirement.
Yeah, as a Madrid fan, he was fantastic in his prime. He was one of the players that got me into the team. He was in that game that I watched when I was 12 or 13. It was a game against Real Sociedad where Madrid won 4-3. So, one of the games that got me into football. Ozil played in it, so it definitely has a place in my heart for where it comes to um, his career and what he's done for the community. Fair enough. All right, yeah, and I'll let you talk more about this one because this is a big talking point. I think this will take up a few minutes of our time here. Bayern Munich did sack Julian Nagelsmann for Thomas Tuchel, so I'll give my 2 cents and then I'll let you elaborate a bit more. I agree with the decision. I don't know if the timing is right. The timing seemed a bit weird to me. But overall, I think the decision, I think it had to happen. Bayern did look a bit sloppy. But if I was them, I might have waited till the end of the season. I would have maybe let Nagelsmann have till the end. And, Dortmund is only 1 point ahead right now. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially with their Classicer being the next match. That's just me. But I do think that the timing was a bit weird.
I think there's a lot of factors that go into this. So obviously his record there was not perfect as far as comparing it to past managers. It wasn't bad. It wasn't negative. It was well over 500 if we're bringing it to a stat like that. Champions League this year, 100% win record. Only conceded in one game, and they had already made it to the next round, so it wasn't a necessary game to be taken serious. But beyond that, I know he wasn't the favorite in the locker room. Louis didn't like him back when he was there. That wasn't really a secret. So I think it just maybe it was a locker room thing. I know recently there was a scandal that someone had leaked their tactics out to the team, whoever they were playing the next day, and then a couple days later, this is what happened. So not really sure if it has anything to do with that. I think this mostly has to do with Tuchel trying to get him before anyone else does, really. I think it's clear that they had their sights set on him for a while. I think it was more about hiring him than getting rid of Nagelsmann. But at the end of the day, it is weird timing. I think the only small blessing, besides the fact that obviously Tuchel is a world class manager, but it's the international break, so they have a little bit of time to get acclimated.
Yeah, for sure. And that does make sense. I'm just kind of in the opinion where if it's a mid-season run, especially with Bayern Munich in the Champions League right now, I think that firing your guy he's been good in the Champions League. Even if they don't like him in the locker room, he has been good in the Champions League. Obviously he's coming up against Man City next, so that's a big game. But I just feel like Nagelsmann's tactics in the UCL were getting it done. And again, as you said, they hadn't really conceded any goals other than one match where it didn't really matter. So I'm kind of wondering if this decision is kind of a risk, because yes, obviously Tuchel is a world class coach. There's no doubts about that. He's a Champions League winner. He's coached the likes of PSG, Chelsea, Dortmund, among others, and he's obviously a world class coach. I just don't quite know if mid season is going to allow Tuchel to really take off. I mean, even compared to when he was hired at Chelsea, he was hired more so in the fall, the winter period. We're now almost in April. There's only like 2 or 3 months left in the season. I would say really two. There's only 2 months left in the season. Do you think that that is enough time for him to get acclimated to this team?
The only saving grace, of course, is he's German. He's coached in the league before. He probably knows a few of the players, honestly, on a personal level, especially just from days in the Bundesliga in the past. That honestly might be the only good thing here. I will say there are a few key players for Bayern who did not get called up, whether it just be based on performance or whatever the case may be. So he's at least having time to be acclimated to some of the starters there, which is pretty important, of course. So I don't know. I'm not sure yet. Obviously, the first game he has to play is probably the biggest one of the year as far as where his career is going to be. So we'll see.
Yeah, it is Der Klassiker. So absolutely big game, going back to his former team in Dortmund. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one for me. Again, I believe the decision was correct. I don't think Nagelsmann was getting it done, but I'm just wondering if the timing is going to hurt Bayern Munich here. We shall see in terms of the Champions League and the Bundesliga. So yeah, that does it for that segment there. Um, Two major headlines regarding the international break. So both involving, basically the greatest of all time in the sport, which are Messi and Ronaldo. Messi reaches 800 goals. Ronaldo breaks the caps record, and I believe he'll be the first one to get over 200. I have no doubts about that in my mind. Both historic achievements. The fact that, Ronaldo's already hit 800 goals, but Messi's hit 800 now as well. Ronaldo's going to hit over 200 caps, which is for the men's is unheard of. It's never happened before in the history of this game. Hitting 200 caps has never happened for a guy. It's happened for a lot of women's players. The likes of Christine Sinclair on Canada have over 300. I mean, those are insane stats, but that's because the women's tournaments happen a lot more often. Hitting 200 caps for a major men's player is almost unheard of, and the fact that Ronaldo's now at 197, that's historic. Messi hits 800 goals. Both of them, I think, will finish with over 900. That's also incredibly historic. So these records cannot be um, put down whatsoever.
Yeah, no, of course. It's cool to see, obviously, especially after the World Cup where Ronaldo didn't get to play as much as people would have hoped as far as his fan base goes and just the general public as far as football fans go. Messi reaching 800, not surprised at all. Just a matter of when, not really if. And he did it in style. Talk about that a little bit later on. Yeah, both great achievements, and I am pretty confident in saying, obviously, it's not going to be the last. As far as the last couple of years, few years of their careers lining up, there's obviously going to be some even better uh, acknowledgments and achievements coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Messi is obviously in the Ballon d'Or conversation this year. Right now, I don't think it's too controversial to say he's the favorite. Personally, I think Mbappe's done more for his club, but you cannot discredit the World Cup achievement that Argentina have prevailed on. But yeah, I mean, two absolutely historic achievements there. Props to Messi, Ronaldo for doing that and just showing us that they are the two greatest, arguably greatest of this game. Obviously, there's a lot of other amazing players that have had historic careers: Pele, Maradona, among others. But yeah, it's absolutely huge. So yeah, moving on to some of our match roundups. So we're gonna dive into our match roundups and then go into our UCL predictions, and then finish up with our segments of the week as we usually do. But moving right in, we're gonna go to the Bundesliga first, and this was Nagelsmann's last match in charge of Bayern Munich, and it was a 2-1 loss to former Real Madrid and Liverpool player as manager Xabi Alonso. Not a good result for Bayern Munich. Even if Tuchel is able to right the ship, this is advantage Dortmund.
Yeah, I did watch the whole game, regrettably. Two penalties, two silly penalties too, in really controversial fashion. Um, they were both not initially penalties, and then VAR overturned it. It was very frustrating to watch, whether or not they were deserved, which they arguably were. It just pissed me off. It wasn't good to see, especially right ahead of a game. Like Dortmund, that's just not really good. Of course, the game against Dortmund is probably likely going to be the decider, as far as not only points but momentum. Uh, the Bundesliga season is 4 games shorter than the rest of the top 5 leagues, so they have a little bit less to correct their course if things go wrong for either club. So this obviously is not what I want to see, or yeah, it's just not really good.
Yeah, obviously Dortmund is out of the Champions League now, which Bayern is still in. So Dortmund can definitely turn a lot more of their focus to the Bundesliga. I forget about the German cups. I forget if both of them are still in that. I believe they are, but I would have to fact check myself there. I mean, the Bundesliga is going to be Dortmund's main priority right now. They got tossed by Graham Potter in the Champions League, which is terrible, but they can only just put all their efforts into the Bundesliga now. They haven't won this competition in 10, 11 years. So, yeah, it's a long time coming for them. They are going to want this more than just about anybody. They're going to want it more than Bayern Munich. I don't think that's going to be too hot of a take there. I think Bayern Munich is going to want the Champions League more, especially coming up against Man City. So it's hard to say what'll happen. Yeah, there are 4 games less because of the amount of teams in the Bundesliga, so that does make it a bit more competitive there, and it'll really be down to the wire. But maybe we'll see if Dortmund is able to winter Klassiker and really start their push on. I can't hear you.
A couple months ago, it was a draw. In the 90th minute, as I think Modest maybe uh, he scored the tying goal.
Yes,
Very
he did.
frustrating again to watch. This one will be no different. It'll be a scrappy battle back and forth. But as a fan, I can only hope. We'll see.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, moving on to League On. There's only really one result that we're going to talk about, and that's PSG losing to Reims. I do believe that the Kim Kardashian curse is very real. I forget what the match she went to before in England was.
That was
I think
Arsenal
it was Arsenal. Yeah,
in
Arsenal
the
didn't
Europa
win.
League.
Yeah, Arsenal did not win. They got tossed by Sporting on penalties. Then she goes to Paris, and actually, I think somebody I know in Paris actually did see her there. But she goes to PSG, they lose. Is Kim Kardashian the new Drake? I absolutely think she is, and arguably she's worse. Because the Drake curse is bad, but Canada did still win the World Cup qualifying group. So he does root for Canada. So I do think that he's at least had a little bit of a redemption arc. Kim Kardashian thus far is 0-2 when it comes to home teams that she's supporting. PSG, despite having Messi and Mbappe, couldn't score a goal in this game at home. That's sad. That is really sad. They're out of the Champions League now. They're losing Ligue 1 games. They're still going to win the league because there's not as much competition in that division. They're still 8 or 9 points ahead. But the fact is that they don't look good. They have the best front three in the world. Obviously, Neymar's hurt right now, but they have the best front three in the world, and they can't get it done. Like that's that's got to feel bad for Christophe Galtier.
Yeah, they are 7 points ahead of Marseille right now, who are in actually kind of decent form. Um, no real excuse. I mean, Rennes is a fifth place team, which I mean they're about 16 points behind PSG as far as positioning goes. They're not even in the Europa League spot, so that's kind of just funny to look at. And they just had a bad couple weeks, I think, in general as a club. And they're a very reactive organization. Stuff like this is what could get Galtier fired just out of the blue. Just that's just kind of what they do. But we'll see what happens when they return from break. They have full focus on this now. This league.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know who they would hire. Tuchel, they've already fired, and he just got hired by Bayern Munich. They're not going to bring Pochettino back. I don't think he'd want to come back anyways. Uh, I mean, Rafa Benitez is out there. I don't think he's gonna want to coach PSG. I think he'd rather take a mid-table Premier League job. I don't know if PSG would look at him anyways. I don't know. Marcelo Bielsa's out there. Uh, I don't know who PSG would hire if they did sack Altier. Maybe another guy from Liga. Hard to say there, but it hasn't been a good season for PSG standards. They haven't looked great in the league. They haven't. They couldn't score a goal against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, even though you know there was an open net and then De Ligt just happened to stuff it. It doesn't. It's not a good look if you're them, and this is one that really I think is gonna haunt them at the end of the season. Now, will they still win Liga? There's no excuse not to. But I think for the amount of convincing their audience and their base that they're a good team, I think there's a little more discussion there.
Yeah, no, they could lose. Honestly, it wouldn't be. It's happened before. They could lose the league. I don't think they will. Obviously, they won't have Neymar for a little bit, but you still have Messi and Mbappe. That really should be enough. Even if you can't defend, you should be able to score. Like that could have easily been a 3-2 result in their favor, but you know,
Yeah. So I don't really have any more to say about that one. Now this one I do. I watched this whole match. I was very happy when Vinicius Jr. scored early, and then Barcelona comes back. That match is El Clasico, and I mean this basically summed up that the La Liga title is over. Barcelona has a 12-point lead. Madrid looked good for parts of this game, especially in the second half, but Barcelona ended up getting a late goal from Franck Kessié, and yeah, I think that about does it for La Liga.
they do have what, like 8 games left or so, or 12 games. I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Regardless, it's a 12-point lead.
Yeah, anything could happen, but Barcelona would have to be a complete blunder for the next however many games to lose this lead. I don't think that's going to happen. Plus, they only have this to focus on. Madrid has uh, two of the biggest rounds of Champions League in their life. Again, back to back as far as this and possibly the semifinal. I think it's quite clear. We'll get to that later. So their focus is shifted to the UCL. Barca is in full force, really, uh, for this. The scandal, which was occurring a couple weeks ago, it seems like that has kind of died down a little bit in media importance. So maybe they are fully focused on this and not having to worry about that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean the scandal is still lingering over them. It hasn't completely gone away. But yes, as you said, it's not as prevalent, but there's a UEFA investigation going into that now. So now it's like it's a real thing. But here's the other thing with Barcelona. Even if they do win La Liga, they still have to unload over $200 million of wages this summer. They budgeted to make it far in the UCL. They didn't. They budgeted to make it in the Europa. They didn't. getting knocked out of those European competitions is going to hurt them a lot more than beating Madrid, and than Madrid will have when Barcelona beats them in the league, La Liga. They've still got a lot of problems, and even though I'm a Madrid fan, I'm salty that we lost. I'm happy that Bartomeu was not our president because, frankly, that guy has screwed over Barcelona more than just about anybody ever could. 200 million's a lot. That's a lot for wages. The average player on Barcelona probably makes about 20 a season. That's about 10 guys you got to unload there. And I think Frankie de Jong's probably at the top of that list as much as he wants to stay. So Barcelona is still a club in crisis, but they did win this game. They outplayed Madrid in the first. They deserved that late goal from Sergio Roberto in the first half. And then, Madrid was pushing at that point, and then they did go down, and Kessie scores the winner. So not much Madrid can do about La Liga, but the Champions League is now their priority. So bad Clasico from Madrid's perspective. Obviously, Vinny gets that deflection off of Ronald Araujo, and that goal was quite shocking. But in the end of the day, Barcelona is going to win La Liga.
Yeah, nothing more to add to that. I agree.
Yeah, fair enough. So moving on to the Prem, we have two major headlines here. The one is that Arsenal were able to beat Crystal Palace pretty convincingly. They did win 4-1 in that game. They extend their lead at the top. They haven't slowed down at all. They're obviously out of the Europa League now, so that's not really much of a problem. But yeah, Arsenal wins again, and at this point, it's not really shocking. I think they're cementing themselves as the favorites.
Yeah, again, from a neutral perspective, as far as Prem goes, I would like to see this. Of course, I know this is not what you would want to see, but it's fresh blood. Since I would rather that not happen in the Bundesliga, I'd love to see that anywhere else. So this would be cool to see. Yeah, I don't know how many games are left. I think probably about 13 or so, 12 or 13. I know City has a game in hand as far as matching it up. They'll probably win, but this is obviously what Arsenal need.
What kind of hypocritical statement is that? Oh, yes. I want to see the Bundesliga
Yes.
be the stalest league ever by winning
Yes.
it over and over. But in this other league here,
Yes.
I want Arsenal to win because I don't want to see that happen in that league too. Come
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Come on. No.
2 times over.
Nah, I'm okay if Arsenal wins as well. Like, I'm a City fan, of course, but if they win, well deserved. Arteta is a former Man City coach, but yeah, don't be doing that. I want to see Dortmund win just so Bayern Munich doesn't win it again.
Really.
Yeah, but yeah, the other headline here in the Prem is that Patrick Vieira, coach of Crystal Palace, was sacked on out of all days. They chose St. Patrick's Day. That's kind of like, come on, really, Crystal Palace? You couldn't just waited the day after. Like, the guy was driving to work, and you fire him on the day where, the spiritual version of him is celebrated. Like, come on. Like, he was probably just ready to, go to training, get his guys ready, even though they're on a, massive winless run, go home, drink a bunch of beer. Like, this guy was probably ready for that. And then you fire him. So then he was going to drink the beer anyway, but the context was completely different. That's just awful. Crystal Palace, what do you do? Obviously, I agree with the decision. They're on a terrible winless run. I think it's over 10. Last time I checked, I think it's somewhere in the range of 10 to 12. I just can't remember the exact number, but yeah, you fire them on St. Patrick's Day. That's just not a good look.
At that point, I would say screw the holiday. You suck. You're not doing anything good. Sorry to tell you, but you got to go find a new job. So
yeah, I think he'll find one. I think he's still a young enough coach where he'll be able to find something. The thing is, though, is I agree again with firing him, but the guy they brought in to replace him is Roy Hodgson. Now, to put it into perspective, he's coached Palace before. He kept them up every year. So we did that really well. But this guy's 76. He's older than like the dawn of time. Like, why is this guy still wanting to coach? He also coached Watford last year and lost 8 of his final 9 matches. So that's a terrible record. But you couldn't bring in somebody better? Like, bring in Rafa Benitez. He's a much better option. Like, Marcelo Bielsa's out there. Coach Leeds. Like, with this Palace team, I think Bielsa would be a great option. There's a lot of attacking talent on this Palace team. But you bring in Roy Hodgson? Ugh. No.
They have the same hiring manager as Club Bruges, clearly making all the right decisions.
Well, I mean, this decision might be worse than that one. At least Scott Parker's young. Like, Scott Parker is a terrible coach, but he's still, I think he's still in his late 30s, early 40s. Like, he's not old, So he's at least maybe there's some innovation there. Roy Hodgson, we know exactly what he's going to do with this Palace team. He is going to park the bus. That's what he tried to do with Watford. That's what he did with Palace for years. His strategy was just, oh, okay, let's defend and hope Wilfred Zaha does something. That's all that's going to happen. It's not going to be anything inventive. Like, we know how this guy coaches. Like, he's 76. Why is he still coaching? Dude, go home. Just enjoy time with your grandkids or something. Like, just, oh my God. Is it really worth the final paycheck?
I think they're just more concerned with getting a result that they are comfortable with. Obviously, this is not a league winner at any capacity, not even close in any of the coming years. But they want to stay up, and if he's done that in the past, that's probably all they really want from him. They definitely don't expect more than that. So that's about all I can see this being.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But he didn't stay up last year. He was brought in for Watford, and he was terrible. So I think this is a gamble for Palace, even though he's been there before and he probably knows the system. They could have done just so much better. My guess is he retires at the end of the year, and they go out and hire somebody like a Marcelo Bielsa. But oh my God, Roy Hodgson. This is the guy that failed with England at Euro 2016, losing to a country with less than 400,000 people. Like, oh,
It's a wonderful story.
yeah, that's when Iceland won. Yeah. Ugh, what a terrible hire. What an awful hire. I can't stress enough how bad of a hire that this truly is, but I guess I'm not Crystal Palace. Yeah, but there's a couple FA Cup games we're going to touch upon as well. The first one is Man City beat Burnley 6-0. Vincent Company returning to the Etihad was the biggest story here. This is a former club as a player. He was greeted well by the fans. He was greeted well by Pep, and then Pep goes out and destroys them 6-0. Erling Haaland scoring another hat trick. That's 8 goals in 2 games for him. That's absolutely ludicrous. He's obviously reaching new heights with City. I think they're finally figuring out what to do with him. But yeah, not a good result for Vincent Company. Obviously, the championship has been his priority this season, and Burnley is comfortably gonna win the championship. They're gonna be back in the Premier League next season. So I think this match is a good learning lesson for Company and Burnley. I think it really says, okay, we're obviously really good in the championship, but when we come to the Premier League, if we want to compete with, not even the likes of Man City, but even the likes of like Brighton, Sheffield, not Sheffield, Brighton, Brentford, those types of teams, we've got to bring in some guys. So I think that's a big lesson for him, and one that I don't think he'll take lightly.
A good wake up call. I don't think, like, obviously 6-0 is not what you want to see, and especially in a tournament, but there's totally things you could take from this. I mean, it's Man City. They're one of the most explosive teams in Europe, so you can't really blame yourselves too much as far as being a team that's in the second division. That's not really totally crazy. So, uh, obviously, you don't want to repeat that But I think they can probably learn from this. I don't think this is actually the worst thing ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you're against Erling Haaland, I mean, a hat trick happening against you is always possible. Um, it's something that he does a lot. But yeah, there's no qualms, I don't think, with Company and Man City still. I still think there's a massive respect there. Company's somebody who could end up managing Man City one day. You know, a lot of people might think it might be Mikel Arteta. It possibly could be. He learned under Guardiola, but I think Company's another shout. You know, club legend. He's obviously doing well right now. I think Company's doing the right thing in going up with a championship team, and I believe he'll stay with them after that point. Massive props to him for that. Doing it the way you're supposed to. He obviously started in Belgium. He's now with Burnley, and instead of the likes of Frank Lampard, instead of having a one season with Derby, failing to get them out of the championship, and then going to Chelsea, it's too big of a jump. Company is obviously with Burnley. He's going to be there for at least a couple of years. Really learn the system, learn the Premier League, and I think he's doing everything that he has to. He's playing an expansive brand of football too, more the Pep style. But yeah, I have all hope that Company is still going to be able to be a fine coach.
Yeah, no, that's pretty exciting. You like seeing the new blood and actually succeed. Of course, like you said, the likes of Lampard and even Gerrard, who hasn't really been up to par. Um, no, has Wayne Rooney been considered for any of these jobs? Yeah, I don't know how he's been as a coach, but
Well, he's in DC United, and his team actually did lose to the New England Revolution last night. He wasn't on the sidelines because he had an illness, but DC's not having a great start to the year, but New England is at the top, so losing to them isn't really a bad thing. I'll talk about that match shortly, but Rooney did really well with Derby last year to fight to keep that team up. They had over a 20-point deduction, and they didn't finish last. That's impressive. That is absolutely impressive. Those players were fighting for Wayne Rooney. I think the DC move was a little weird, but I think it'll be one that works out. They're a club that's kind of in a rebuild phase, so I think Rooney's the right guy to lead them there.
well, regardless, I think that's a name you could see in the future at one of these big-ish clubs. Probably not one of the top six unless they're absolutely desperate. Um, but yeah, again, more young blood as far as coaching goes that you'd like to see. That's a big job.
Yeah, I could see Rooney managing the likes of maybe Everton, a club that he grew up with and played for twice in his career. So I could see him taking that type of job, maybe see how he does there, and then if he wants to make that jump, if a team wants him there, they'll go for him. I don't think any of the big six are going to have any managerial changes anytime soon. Maybe Chelsea. Other than Chelsea, I don't think any of them are going to really be in that need. I think Man United's set with Ten Hag. And speaking of Ten Hag, Fulham played Manchester United in the FA Cup, and all I got to say about this game is obviously Man U win 3-1, but Fulham absolutely just shot themselves in the foot. There's no other way to put it, really. I mean, they took like a giant military issued bazooka, aimed it right in the ground, and just fired because that is what happened. Everything blew up on site for Fulham. Willian runs back. Jadon Sancho's on a clean break. And by the way, Jadon Sancho should have shot the ball about 3 seconds earlier than he did. He was around Burns Leno in the goal. He could have just passed it into the goal, but instead he holds onto it for an extra couple seconds, cuts in, shoots, and then Willian handles the ball. If Sancho had just shot it, which I think would have been the right decision in this case, he would have probably scored and it would have been 1-1 and then it would have been a competitive game. But instead, Willian runs back, accidentally handles the ball, denies an obvious goal scoring opportunity. It's 1-1 after Bruno Fernandes does what he does best, which is score penalties. And then, but before that happened, Marco Silva, the coach, gets sent off for arguing with the VAR, even though it's an unfortunate call, but it was the right call. I mean, Willian absolutely handled the ball there. There was no trying. He tried to pull his arm in, but it hit his fist. There's no denying that one. But then Alexander Mitrovic loses his mind. And like, if there's one thing that you do not do, it is bump the referee. And that's exactly what he did. He goes over, hits him with his shoulder, and then immediately gets sent off. Like, dude, you're the talisman of your team. This isn't going to just affect the FA Cup. This is going to affect your Premier League season. Like, you scored earlier in this match. If you just kept your cool, you can at least try to come back with 10 men. Instead, you get sent off. Your team is 9, and then you're virtually screwed. Man U scores up like a minute or two later through Marcel Sabitzer, and then Bruno scores a late one. Like, if Mitrovic didn't do that, Fulham still had a chance. But that's what happened. And Fulham absolutely just, despite leading this game through Mitrovic, lose their cool and lose the match.
That was more circus show. It was very entertaining. Yeah, there's no real excuse for that. I mean, of course, if coach gets sent off, that is pretty hard, especially against a team who's in the form of United right now. That's never an easy task, but you definitely had a chance to at least keep it close, like you were saying. So he definitely let them down. I don't think this carries over to any game as far as red cards go, obviously because they're out of the competition. I don't really know the rules on that. So I think at least the saving grace is that it doesn't really matter. But as far as mentality goes and attitude, obviously, something needs to be talked about.
Yeah, for sure. But what this match does do, is it potentially sets up a final of Man City, Man U in the FA Cup. Now, the likes of Sheffield United somehow were able to get there to the semifinals. Their run was a bit interesting. They struggled to beat Wrexham. Like, they had to replay against Wrexham, and Wrexham was going to beat them. Now, mind you, this team is second in the championship, so they're probably going to be playing in the Premier League next season. But they somehow still made it to the semifinals, despite narrowly scraping it out against basically every team they've played. But they're against Man City now. And Man City beat the team above them in the championship 6-0. Now they're going to Wembley, and here's the thing. Both of these teams are traveling from the very top of England all the way south. These teams are both north. That's not good for Sheffield. Both teams are, in a territory that they normally don't go to. Man City's been to Wembley a lot more than Sheffield has recently. I don't think this match is going to be pretty for Sheffield United. But on the other side, Manchester United is facing Brighton in the FA Cup. That match is going to be a lot more competitive. And I am really hoping Brighton wins. Because at this point, we can probably I don't like to say this, but it's pretty safe to assume Man City should go through. I mean, you're playing Sheffield United. Like, it's a team from the championship. If you don't beat them, what's wrong with you? But on the other side, if Brighton beats Man United and faces City in the final, as a City fan, would I be mad if I lost the FA Cup? Yes. But would I be happy for Brighton? Absolutely. But if I lose to Man United, I'm going to be pissed.
I actually do enjoy Brighton. They've been pretty fun to watch this year. No superstars. Of course, you can argue now after a World Cup win that McAllister is a superstar, but I'm never going to say that. He is a role player. Matoma's a role player. They got a few other guys, but it's just a team that meshes well. And they're doing quite well in the Prem as far as their standards go. They're bottom half of 7 through 10, I think, somewhere in that range.
I believe so.
So they're doing pretty well as far as what you would assume they could do on paper. I would not be surprised if they honestly win. Of course, United is in great form, but so is Brighton. United shouldn't lose this game, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah, exactly. I think if Brighton does win, the potential X factor for them is 18-year-old boy wonder Evan Ferguson. I mean, this guy is he's only played 10 matches thus far this year, but he's got 3 goals, which for an 18-year-old is pretty impressive. He scored a couple times in the last FA Cup match. I mean, he could be the difference maker here. And, you know, Ireland has not had a major talent in a very long time. The last one I can think of is probably Robbie Keane. And he retired, well over 5 or 6 years ago. Evan Ferguson is arguably going to be the biggest star that they've had since Robbie Keane, if he is able to reach his potential. But he could absolutely be the X factor of this game if Brighton are able to win. And that's a big task for an 18-year-old, but I do think he's proving right now that he's capable of doing this thing.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's just really a team that's fun to watch. That's all I can really say about them. It's nothing that you expect anything crazy from, but at the same time, when they do all these wonders things and Matoma goes on these runs and whatnot, it's like you're not really surprised. It's just like it's a little bit expected there at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that'll do it for our roundup session. Now let's move on to our prediction section. The UCL is in the final 8. Matches are starting in a week or two. And we'll start off with the big one. Manchester City against Bayern Munich. One of my teams against your team. Now, biases aside, I think each team's going to win at home. I think it's a matter of which team can outscore the other in their home venue. I'm going to back City to win. You're obviously going to back Bayern to win. But I think each team is going to win at home. If I believe the Etihad's the first venue. I think double check that, but I think if either team can get an away result, I think they're basically a shoo-in to win. Now I'm going to give City the advantage from as impartial of a stance as I can. Man City's had good fortune against Bundesliga teams. They beat Bayern in the past. They just destroyed RB Leipzig, who is not that much worse than Bayern Munich. Like, they have Erling Haaland. He's fired on all cylinders against Bayern Munich before. He's well aware of them. I just think the City's got that X factor with Haaland. If they didn't have him, I would actually probably back Bayern to win this series. But I think Haaland is going to be enough to carry them on and push forward. I'm going to go. Is the first leg at home or away?
At City.
It's at City. I'm going to go City wins the first leg 3-1. And I'm going to go Bayern Munich wins the second leg 2-1.
I think one of them is going to be a draw. And I think as far as key players go, De Ligt, of course, he will be, and he needs to be on top of his game. I think Choupo-Moting, as funny as it is to say, he's been quite good, and you can make that face all you want. He has 16.
No, he's been fine.
And despite the fact that Haaland is breaking all records and making the striker job look like a joke, with a record like that, 16 goals is pretty good. So yeah, make all the faces you want. He is the guy that they have right now. And people said the same thing against PSG. You can't beat PSG, especially with a striker like Choupo-Moting. But he scores, he does his job. Obviously, he has great players surrounding him. Musiala is gonna do what he does best. And as far as memes go, you got Tuchel now, who has a decent record against City in the Champions League. All jokes aside, I'm obviously gonna back Bayern here. I do think it'll be close. I think one of these games is gonna be a draw. I don't think there will be more than a 1-goal deficit as far as either of these games go. No matter which side it goes, I don't think either of these games are going to be blowouts. So
Yeah, I do think that the difference between City and PSG, there's two things that I think stand out other than Erling Haaland here. One is that PSG is coached by Christophe Galtier. Man City's coached by a serial winner, which is Pep Guardiola. Obviously, he hasn't won the Champions League with City, but he's won about everything else. He's won it with Barcelona. Obviously, he is coming up against Tuchel, who, yes, did have his number several times in the Premier League and the UCL. But Tuchel is also going to face him only having the Bayern job for less than a month. So that could be a factor. The other factor is that Man City's defense is a lot better than PSG's. Now, PSG's best defender is an aging Sergio Ramos. Maybe a shout for Marquinhos. He missed a penalty in the World Cup that knocked his country out. Is he really that good? He's obviously, yes, he's obviously a great player, but when it comes to crunch time, he's about as, sound as a wet paper towel. But Man City's defense is a lot better than PSG's. Ruben Dias is better than any of PSG's defenders. Depending on who Man City starts alongside him, it'll either be Manuel Akanji, who has played Bayern Munich a lot with Dortmund, or the likes of Aymeric Laporte or John Stones, both sound defenders in their own right. The weakness in Man City is their left back position, because it'll either be Nathan Ake, who, to be fair, has actually done quite a good job in that position, but not his natural position. Joao Cancelo, I forget if he's allowed to play this game or not. I forget what the rules are about that. I think he is. I think he's allowed to play. He's going to give Ake nightmares, even though Ake is probably very familiar with his game because obviously Cancelo is still a Man City player. The other factor is, those are the two factors. Man City's defense is better than PSG's and Pep Guardiola. Now, the midfield could be a big factor. Obviously, De Bruyne is better than any of Bayern's midfielders, but I think after that, the next couple are Bayern Munich players for how good the midfield is. I would put the likes of Kimmich over. Actually, now that I'm saying that, Rodri and Kimmich are probably about even. They're. I would say they're the two best CDMs in the world, alongside Casemiro. That's about even. But the other one is Musiala against Gundogan, and as much as I love Gundogan, Musiala is better. There's a lot more creativity, inventiveness there. I think Goretzka is probably about even with Gundogan, but yeah. And then goalkeeper, I'm going to give the advantage to Sommer, to Jan Sommer. But I just think that City has enough to get it done. Haaland, the defense, and Pep, I think will be enough to do it.
Sure, of course, but as much as he's aware of Bayern, they're obviously very aware of him. It goes both ways. Of course, Sommer hasn't been there as far as facing up against Haaland, but he's played him before as well. So the whole team, for the most part, is quite familiar with him, and they have been able to stop him in the past. So it's definitely going to be close. I'm not going to combat that either way. No matter which way it goes, it'll be close. We have our own reasons, and I'm proud of us for keeping this as simple as possible compared to an Instagram comment section. But
very true.
We'll see. It's in a couple weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks. But it'll be a very fun game to watch. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think whoever wins this game, I mean, if they're able to get past Madrid, I think have every right to win the Champions League.
It's a tough side of the bracket.
Yeah, I'm already saying Madrid because the next game on the left side of the bracket is Madrid against Chelsea. And I get that Chelsea beat Dortmund. To be fair to Dortmund, as much as, I do like them, they're one of the weaker teams in this bracket. So was Chelsea. And the fact that Chelsea somehow prevailed is crazy, but they're going to get humbled. I mean, this is not going to be a good series for them. They're going to lose 4-0 in Madrid. Like I'm not even saying that as a joke. I actually think Chelsea's going to lose 4-0 in Madrid. Maybe they'll get a tie at Stamford Bridge, but they are not winning in Spain. They're going to get absolutely humiliated. The 21 million they spent for Graham Potter is going to get thrown down the drain. Like Enzo Fernandez is going to get bullied by Luka Modric. Like it's not going to be a good game. Poor Kepa's gonna have to worry about Karim Benzema creeping up on him. Like it's Vinicius is gonna torture Reece James. Like it's not gonna be a good match for Chelsea. I'm gonna go 4-0 at Madrid, 1-1 at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, coincidentally enough, I do think Chelsea have a better chance than Liverpool did. Not that they're going to win, but as far as the last two campaigns have gone, they'd have gone back and forth. So they do put up quite a fight, but that was under different management, of course. Madrid, without a doubt, is getting through this tie. Um, maybe a 3-0 because I don't see Chelsea scoring really in this first game at least. Of course, they've picked it up the tiniest bit as far as the last few games, but then of course they just drew their last game, so they're scoring now, but they're not really what they should be when it comes to facing a team like this. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, it's gonna be very ugly. Madrid is gonna dominate every facet of this game. It could be another Man City Madrid semifinal, or it could be another Bayern Munich Madrid semifinal. I just don't give Chelsea any chance here. And hey, maybe they'll prove us wrong. Maybe they're built for the UCL under Potter, even though he's really never coached in it. But hard to say. I really think Madrid's going to win. I don't think Chelsea has a chance here. I really don't. And I feel bad for saying that, but I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. I I was in their stadium last year when they were chanting "Champions of the World." They're going to be lucky if they're cheering. We're in the Europa Conference League next season. Like that's where it's come down to for them. So yeah, 600 million for currently in 10th place. How does that feel, guys? Oh, not good. Not good at
Pretty
all.
pretty
Yeah.
awkward.
But yeah, anyways, that's the difficult side of the bracket. The other side of the bracket is the Italian side of the bracket. And again, no offense to any of these teams, but really Napoli's the only one that I think is on par with the other side of the bracket. They're up against AC Milan. I mean, if the Serie A table has anything to say about it, Napoli should win this tie. They absolutely should. Obviously, AC Milan's got the history in the Champions League, winning it 6 times. But I do believe that Napoli is the stronger team. Their duo of Kvara and Osimhen has been maybe the most dynamic in the world this year. I think Napoli will win like 2 or 3-0 at home, and they'll maybe get another win in AC in Milan at the San Siro.
We've seen Napoli have a couple shocks this year, but even so, this is a 2-game series. They're not going to lose twice. They're not. I don't think they're going to lose once, but of course, if crazy things happen, I do pick Napoli confidently. I feel like the last tie they had was kind of lackluster as far as what you're used to from Napoli this year. So I'm hoping for at least a couple more goals as far as you just aggregate. I feel like the last one was kind of boring, but they should win this no problem.
Yeah, they were comfortable against Frankfurt. I don't see that being an issue again. Um, yeah, I mean, as if Serie A has anything to say, I mean, this should be a fairly not easy. I don't like to use that word. It is still the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Making it there is very difficult, but it's going to be, it's a fortunate tie for Napoli. Napoli should be a shoe-in for the final. I mean, for the amount of quality that this team has, and for the fact that they don't have to face Madrid, Manchester City, Bayern Munich. Sorry, Chelsea. The fact that they don't have to face any of those teams to get to the final, I mean, that's absolute fortune. But then again, there's also teams that have been knocked out. PSG, Dortmund. Like teams like that are all more competitive than AC Milan is. AC Milan got a bit fortunate. Their defense carried them through this tie. But they also beat Tottenham. They beat the team that doesn't win silverware. 1-0. They beat them 1-0 on aggregate over 2 legs. They scored 1 goal. I believe it was Brahim Diaz. I don't see them. I don't see them beating Napoli. I just don't.
No, no, I'm just gonna say no. There's not much they can do. Of course, Serie A or just really league games in general tend to be crazy. But I can't say there's anything special going into this one that's gonna change the tide as far as what we expect.
Yeah. And yeah, moving on to the final match. This one I would say is the biggest toss-up. It is Inter Milan against Benfica.
Yes.
So I'm going to pick Inter by a very small margin. I mean, this one, if I'm wrong, I'm not going to be that mad because these teams are pretty even on paper. I don't see too much between them. If one player stands out, if he is able to find form, it'll be Romelu Lukaku. But otherwise, I mean, this is about as even of a UCL quarterfinal match as you're going to get. Benfica obviously did make the semifinals last year. They're not a team that gets messed with easily. Gonzalo Ramos is a quality player. Rafa Silva is a quality player. Their goalkeeper is pretty good. There's some quality in this Benfica team. Do I think they'll beat Inter? Maybe, but I'm still picking Inter Milan. I'm going to back their strikers, Dzeko, Lukaku, and the amount of quality that is in this area this season.
I am going to go the opposite way. I do think it'll be close, but just think I've seen more from Benfica this year. Of course, Inter has been a little bit unlucky as far as their drawing goes with Bayern in the group stage and whatnot. But I don't think they've been that strong. Obviously, they are a little conflicted with the fact that they are getting destroyed in the Serie A, which is not something they're used to. Um, but I don't think this is a team with the mentality to go that far. Even if they beat Benfica, obviously they're going to get smacked in the next round. But I'm going to say, regardless, probably Benfica with a one or two uh, benefit of goals in aggregate. I think they'll win this one.
Yeah, similarly to AC Milan, Inter also scraped through on one goal, and that goal is from Lukaku. It definitely doesn't bode well for that, but their defense is still very strong with the likes of Milan Skriniar and Stefan de Vrij. So it's possible that Inter's defense is able to get the job done. Obviously, they do have a lot of attacking power from Benfica to deal with. Here's the thing with Benfica too, though. They're going to lose somewhere. They're not going to win the UCL. They could make the final and they'd get absolutely crushed. Now, if anyone's not familiar with it, I'm referring to the Benfica curse that was placed on them in the early 1960s by a guy named Bela Gutmann. Now, he was a coach for Benfica back then, and he won them 2 Champions Leagues, which, by all accounts, is pretty impressive. Eusebio was on that team. Well, this guy wanted a pay raise, and they said no, despite the fact that this guy had just won them 2 Champions Leagues. Like, I think he was fair to ask for that. They said no. And then instead of, just saying like, okay, I'll still coach, he leaves and then says, not in 100 years will not Bayern Munich. Oh my God. Not in 100 years will Benfica win the UCL or ever be European champions. It was European champions. They have lost 7 finals since that happened. Both UCL and Europa. They haven't won any. So I'm not one to really, be like, okay, well, superstition. This is maybe one of the few occasions where I can be like, maybe this happened. Because this team is allergic to European silverware since the 60s. They have not won anything. And that includes the Europa League, where I would say arguably they're always one of the favorites if they're in that competition. Instead, they just get put up against Unai Emery and, he does his thing there. But Benfica's going to lose somewhere. And if it's not in this tie, it'll be in the next one. And if they somehow make the final, whoever's in the final is going to be like, we feel like $1 million right now because we're against a team that's absolutely cursed in the Champions League final, and then they'll win. So Yeah, Benfica's not winning the Champions League.
I'd never put them that far. Even without the cars, they're not. They don't have the quality to get past Napoli, obviously. And even if they did have three juggernauts waiting for them, possibly that's just not. It's not going to happen.
Or Chelsea.
So,
yeah. So yeah, moving on to, it looks like Hunter's Wi-Fi is off a little bit, but I will move us on to our final round here of the oh, you're back. Okay. Wi-Fi issues fixed. I'll move us on to the final. It might be my it looks like it might be on my end. But yeah, moving on to the final round here. Our usual segment of idiot goal and hero of the week. Since my Wi-Fi is laggy and I might get disconnected, I'll go first. My hero of the week is Messi and Ronaldo. I mean, the records speak for themselves. They had a good run, and by all accounts, they deserve it.
no complaints there. Of course, we talked about that earlier. I'm going to say, not from my perspective, but from a perspective, VAR against Bayern really saved Leverkusen's ass twice. So even if it was rightfully so, that's just absolutely insane. You don't really see that. One mistake gets corrected, two mistakes in quick fashion getting corrected, two yellow cards rescinded. Bananas. We'll call it bananas. The VAR was definitely the hero of the week, especially in Dortmund's eyes, honestly. But, yeah.
Yep. Can't refute that one at all. Yeah, moving on to our goal of the week. I said Erling Haaland against Burnley. I'm referring to the second goal he scored. It gets crossed in. Instead of just putting it in the low corner, Haaland curls it right around the goalkeeper, giving him absolutely no chance. Beautiful bit of skill from his part. You know, people can say whatever they want as, tap and merchant or whatever. That was a well-taken shot. That was a good goal. I'm going to give it to him.
A little bit of kind of what you said a little bit earlier. I'm going to give this to Messi, of course. It was just a nice goal to watch, and the implications that it had, albeit in a game that's not that important. Of course, it led to a record that we'll see increase in the future. It was nice to watch, and it was definitely a goal of the week for me.
Fair enough. As for idiot of the week, now there's a couple candidates here for me. One is the Argentina goalkeepers for their celebration, holding the World Cup trophies in a certain spot. That's just immature and stupid. I don't care if anyone's like, oh, soft. Yeah, it's a stupid celebration, and if you defend it, I don't care if it's deemed soft, it's disrespect. Sorry. Um, it just is. But I gotta give it to Fulham, but Alexander Mitrovic for losing his absolute mind.
It's very entertaining, though. I'd put him even in a hero spot just because of how fun it was to watch, really.
Maybe for
But
Manchester United.
for me, I'm going to go with Ramsdale as far as his performance in the Europa League. Um, his mistake really was what led to even going into extra time. He was so far out of the box, off the line, that a goal that was taken from two stadiums away could actually get into the net. So obviously that's one thing. And then when it comes to penalties, you save nothing. You get a hand on one of them barely. It's not really a performance that you can excuse from a Premier League keeper who was about to win the league, possibly. It's just kind of not a good performance to watch.
Yeah, that's fair. And it led to Arsenal's only competition now being the Prem. So kind of a disappointing end for everything else. If they win the league, it's obviously still a big thing for them. But yeah, can't really refute that one. Well, that will do it from us this week. We went over a fair bit that has happened in the last couple of weeks. Didn't even mention MLS at all, but the New England Revolution, our local team, did win both games since we did our last episode. 1-0 against Nashville. I was actually there. And then they won 2-1 over DC United last night, which we did briefly touch upon. But they're having a great year so far. But yeah, we discussed the fact that Ozil retired, Nagelsmann was sacked, Ronaldo became the most capped player, Messi scored his 800th goal, and then we dove into some matches about the Bundesliga, Liga, La Liga, the Prem, FA Cup, as well as predicted the UCL, and then rounded it up with our usual section. As always, my name is Grayson Mortimer,
I'm not the boy.
and we will see you next time.